Hi, I'm Marianne.
I'm not Leanne.
Today we have Mr. John Looney with us.
Hey, how's it going? And Marianne, welcome to the Walnut Room.
Wow, walnuts. Makes me think of squirrels. Did you have a lot of squirrels here? And where are we?
Well, there weren't any squirrels in here to my knowledge, but there's a lot of squirrely decisions made here. So you could say, but we're at 2000 Kentville Road, the site of what was once built originally as HYSTER.
Wow.
So this was Plant 2, and I bet you want to know what happened to Plant 1.
I do.
All right, let's go talk about it.
All right, cool.
Buckle up. It's time for Kewanee Memory Lane, where we cruise down the 4 lanes of Kewanee history with a detour of fun uncovering the past, coming to you straight from the Kewanee Historical Society in the heart of downtown Kewanee. Here are your hosts, Marianne and Leanne.
Thanks for joining us, and we are going to be talking about HYSTER today.
Yes. So let's talk about a little bit about HYSTER. Some people call it HYSTER. Some people call it BOMAG. Some people have called it Compaction America. But it started as...
Martin Trailer.
Yes. And actually before that, it was Martin Machine.
And until a short time ago, I did not know about either of those companies, so it was just really neat to learn more, and I'm excited to learn more.
Yeah. So we've done some really great research. There's been a lot of great resources at the museum. And really, this whole business started as Martin Machinery, which then became Martin Trailer. But this whole business represents 74 years in Kewanee of construction equipment manufacturing.
Wow.
So
It's a long time.
It is. And just think about the number of Kewaneans who worked here, who played here, it was generations of people from families. So,
Right.
But before we start with that, just a couple of things is, so HYSTER, which is predominantly, I should say, the mainstay of what not only this plant was, but it was for the other plant as well. It was founded in Portland, Oregon in 1929 with a company called ESCO, the Electric Steel Foundry Company, being one of the majority shareholders of that company. And we'll come back to that in a little bit later.
Okay.
So just so you know, there's many twists and turns of the construction equipment industry here in Kewanee, with a lot of things going up and down, left and right sometimes, but it all started with Martin Machine. So you want to start there?
Yeah, sounds great.
So I think you've heard me talk about this guy, W.E. Jim Martin. He started a repair shop and he on his farm, and he was fixing Model Ts for a living.
Right.
So then he decided, you know what? I'm doing a lot of this work. So then he went ahead and bought, or I shouldn't say bought. He set up a shop. He set up in a garage near Railroad Avenue on 3rd Street, and I believe it was 512 Commercial Street. And I think you checked it out.
Yeah, it's an empty space now.
But there is a couple of other garages and stuff down there.
And you can see a piece of concrete. I don't know if that's where it was, but you get the idea. And it was right along the tracks. Yeah.
So he had that, and he actually leased that from Kewanee Machinery and Conveyor.
Really?
Yes.
I did not know that.
I didn't either. I found it interesting that Machinery and Conveyor would have another building outside of what we would classify as their main building.
Right, for sure.
So here's a crazy thing. To accomplish the move, he constructed a low-head trailer to move his lathes and other heavy machinery there. And we've got a few pictures, and we don't know if this is the exact trailer, but there's this trailer.
That's pretty cool.
And then there's this trailer here as well.
Wow.
And so the low-head trailer, the thing was you didn't have to lift things up very high to get...
and you can see this is 512 Commercial Street. You see it right by the tracks, yeah.
Yeah.
You can totally envision it if you were to go to the property, yeah.
Yeah. So he did that, and then funny thing happened. So people saw his trailer, and then they started asking him, hey, can I borrow your trailer?
So initially he was fixing Model Ts.
Yep.
But then he's like, maybe this trailer company is going to be more lucrative, or
I think what happened from what I can understand and what I've seen is he started, just fixing Model Ts, doing regular machinery work, and then when he made the move, he created this trailer, and then people started liking the trailer, and then I think light bulb moment.
yeah, hey,
People like the trailer. I might as well just go ahead and produce it,
right.
right?
So I'm thinking he probably didn't stay with the Model T stuff, but who knows? We don't know.
We don't know exactly because I mean the Star Courier articles that I went through, I mean it did have Martin Machinery there and it talked about it, but then it really focused on the trailer, especially in 1939 when a customer asked him to build a trailer to haul a Cat DH trailer with a high lift shovel, which the only thing I could compare it to, and by the way I tried to look it up online. I couldn't find anything, but I'm thinking it's more like one of the end loaders and such that we've seen, especially with the recent storms, that we've had with the big scoop. But also, if you've ever been through Peoria Airport, there's a Cat D2 bulldozer, which also was one of the things from a Star Courier article where they use these trailers and they would just basically pull up onto it.
Just seeing that machinery, you just try to guess how much weight you'd have to. I mean, it had to have been just.
It's a lot. I
Yeah.
would say, especially back then.
Yeah.
I mean, things were a lot heavier back then because it was all metal construction and everything. So things progressed rapidly. And in 1940, Jim Martin, as the Martin Machine Company, gained $24,000 in inventory, additional dealers, and more customers.
Wow. And he was still at 512 commercial.
At that point in time, he was. And in 1941, he moved from Commercial Street to Tenney Street.
Oh, I jumped the gun on you. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Because we didn't talk about the Y at Tenney Street.
And it doesn't seem to be a Y now, but it was back before it was a 4-lane. And maybe, we'll talk about that some other time. But
yeah, and that's kind of where Scooters is currently. What used to be what we think it was Newman Excavating.
Yep.
While the buildings may have not been Newman Excavating, but there's some buildings there. So he went ahead and the business was then named Martin Trailer Company.
Okay.
So now, the company was having some great success, but then there's the little war called World War II that went ahead and broke out.
Yeah.
And that made steel a hot commodity because everybody needed it for the war effort.
Harder for him to make a living.
It was, and because the thing was, he couldn't produce the number of trailers he needed to make a great profit.
Right.
But he kept going, and then he answered a Department of Defense, I guess, inquiry. And he got a contract from the U.S. government to make some trailers.
Nice, because I know Boiler Shop and Walworth had governmental contracts to help with the war effort. So it sounds like he got in on that too.
He did. And then that prompted another kind of invention. And that's, according to the Star Courier article, that is where he creates the folding gooseneck.
You were explaining that to Leanne and I, and it's just really interesting to see. Yeah.
So this is one of the early trailers that I think that it looks like he built, and here's another early one.
Wow.
Now on the picture behind us, that is actually a removable gooseneck, where so you can see the gooseneck there, and they're actually driving a HYSTER compactor on it. But the foldable gooseneck, it takes that gooseneck and it folds down almost into like a ramp.
Which would be handy to get that machinery on there.
Yes.
Because I'm thinking, how are you going to lift that on there?
Oh, you're not going to lift it unless you have a crane.
You can't. Yeah.
Well, you would have to have a crane. So then and think about it. If you had to lift off your heavy equipment with a crane every time, then that gets expensive.
It does get expensive.
So yes. So the Army Corps of Engineers installed the folding gooseneck with outstanding success, and they had a very unique product which had no competitor in the market with the folding gooseneck.
Really?
Yes. So things were looking up, and he had the contract. The war ended, and things were going really well. In 1949, can you guess what happened?
He got bought out. I don't know.
It was a fire.
Oh, there was a fire.
Yes. So there's a fire at the Tenney Street location at the Y. And the crazy part is, at that point in time, they had the big fire, and then...
And this was on Tenney Street.
This is on Tenney.
Okay.
So part of the factory was destroyed, but then he went ahead and bought some land out on Northeast Street almost immediately.
Oh, I think I know where that is.
Yeah, so it's where American Steel is today.
Uh-huh.
And that's where former HYSTER Plant 1 is.
Okay.
So, which was originally Martin Trailer.
Okay.
So that was built as Martin Trailer.
Okay.
So, what happened there is, then so they went ahead and rented that. Then there's another interesting part in the Star Courier article. I think I know where this place is, but I think we've talked about it a little bit. But it says they rented a place south of the Wethersfield football stadium to build some additional trailers, has some additional space.
That might even be where that strip mall is now. I mean,
It could be there, or I'm thinking it's the glass shop.
Oh.
But
that would make sense.
But there's no addresses, so I don't.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
so what do you do?
Yeah. I have a question though. So
Yeah.
that folding gooseneck.
Yeah.
Did the government take that over and say they wanted to patent it? I mean, did it stay his or?
So that's the interesting part. Is so I looked up the patents, and the government didn't say anything about patenting it, but there was the only patents registered were about in the late '60s and the '70s on it, but there was no real patent on it, which I found kind of be a little odd. But I haven't been able to figure out that part of the story. But I've dug into the patent archives online, which are really cool. You can search them. So you can search them online. And I can't find any. I can find some patents from Jim Martin, but nothing. And there's a lot of trailer patents from him, but nothing on the foldable gooseneck.
Okay.
But yet the Star Courier article that I read during this time period mentioned the folding gooseneck multiple times.
Right.
So.
And you had mentioned to us before, too, there was a number of people from Kewanee that had patents, or they were on that list. So we do need to look at that sometime.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great episode. Maybe we get Leanne in here for that episode.
Maybe we could.
Yeah, we could.
Yeah.
So in 1949, in September 22nd, they started pouring the factory floor on Northeast Street. And production we moved as soon as possible from the Tenney Street location due to space constraints. On November 17th, the office buildings were set up and the operations were moved to the new buildings at 8th and Northeast Street. A warehouse, which was put up over summer, is now up and functioning, and they're ready to go. So you had an interesting conversation with someone who was a first tenant of the office, didn't you?
I'm sorry?
Who was a first tenant of that new office.
Oh, Carol Carpenter. She let me come over and look at some pictures for HYSTER and just have a chat with her and some other folks that were employed there and her husband. And she, as a young woman, was able to be in a brand new office with all new equipment. I mean, fancy equipment of that time. And she said it was just so neat to be able, she just felt important, knew she had an important job, and it just was neat as a young lady to be in the workforce, in the business world, and to have that experience.
Well, and I was going to say, for everything to be brand new and just straight out the gate.
Yes.
I mean, that had to be exciting.
Oh yeah. She has a lot of HYSTER memories and thinks fondly of HYSTER. Yep.
So, well, we haven't hit HYSTER yet, but we're getting close.
Okay. I know we're getting a little ahead, but it's okay.
You're right. So Martin Trailer hit a milestone in 1956 and now has trailers in 14 different countries and around the world.
So how, I mean, I don't know, I guess somehow these other countries became aware and said, hey, I don't know how that works. So
well, and then that's part of this. The other part of the story is without having some direct. I've tried to talk to as many people as possible, but without having some direct correlation and such. The Star Courier articles say that I read, and the other articles I was able to find about Martin Trailer, basically said that they would seek out new dealers, and then they would progress from country to country to country.
That makes sense. Having connections,
and such. So then in 1958, Martin Trailer announces a merger.
Oh.
With HYSTER Corporation.
So, wow. He had already been in business how many years now?
Well, if you count the 30s, it's been about 28 years.
He's had a long, successful business.
Yeah. And then I know we've talked about this. This is not the end for Jim Martin. So I think that's another episode. So, but getting back to this, so they merged with the HYSTER Company in 1958. And at that point in time, the HYSTER plant, which was on Northeast Street, was known as HYSTER, or Kewanee HYSTER Plant 1.
Okay.
So now, next, they hit another milestone in 1962. Mm-hmm. They have now produced 10,000 trailers.
Wow.
So now,
that's a lot.
If you think about the buildings down there, and I think somewhere, it's right here, matter of fact.
We even have
I have a photo, and we'll put the photo up. But here is the original buildings for HYSTER Plant 1. Mm-hmm. And actually, there's a better one right there.
This is more of a zoomed in one. Yeah.
So that's a better one there. Mm-hmm. So taking a look at this, the plant today, I mean, while there's some small additions and stuff, it's roughly the same size as it was when it first started.
That was pretty cool for back in the time.
Oh, it was. I mean, and the other thing which is cool about this picture that we'll throw up, there's a couple of different things, is number one, there's houses here, which are not here today.
Yeah.
And so I'm guessing that over time, they bought up the different houses, demolished them.
And one thing we discovered too is, 8th Street kind of continued into the plant.
Right.
Which I never knew that to be. I always thought, okay, it's at 9th and East. Well, it's, the address was 800 East Street. So I didn't know that either.
Yeah. And then one other thing we spied, and we'll put up some more pictures, but we did not realize, but there is a railroad spur, which doesn't exist anymore, that was actually on there at that point in time. So they could actually load the trailers on railroad cars and ship them that way.
So convenient no matter where he's at, except for on Tenney Street, he wasn't near a railroad track.
Correct.
But
yeah. But at that point in time, he was expanding, and I was going to say expanding rapidly.
Yeah, he was.
So the other thing was, at that point in time in 62, they were producing 500 trailers per year, and they had about 20% market share. So, I mean, think about it. If you could get 20% market of just about anything, I mean, that's a lot of money.
Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah.
So next, HYSTER makes another move. Mm-hmm. They buy a plot of land. Can you guess what plot of land it is?
I think the one that we're on right now.
That's right. So they go ahead and they buy a plot of land out here on 2000 Kentville Road.
Now, was this part original, or do you know that we're sitting in the
walnut
room? I mean, if you guys could come in this room, it's just beautiful.
So this is original part of Plant 2. Mm-hmm. We're sitting in the walnut room. The walnut room was right next to the president's office.
I call it the war room.
You could, yes. I mean, this is where all the big meetings went down. This is where
tears were shed.
Yes, in some circumstances. But this is where all happened. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And this is really. We'll probably go ahead and post some additional pictures. I mean, the tiles at the ceiling, you can definitely tell that people smoked in this room. Mm-hmm. Because, think about it. It's from the 60s.
Yeah.
That was commonplace.
They didn't know it was bad for them then.
Right?
I don't know.
So, but this is all original to the building.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. And so just the paneling and everything like that, it's just interesting. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of other places in this building which still have some original stuff, and we'll try to get. Here's some of the original things we found in the plant. Here's where a water cooler used to be, and this is some of the original tiling we believe from the 60s. Next, this is a watch clock station used by the guards to prove that they were going around and hitting the rounds every night. Next, a very huge key cabinet that housed all the keys to the plant and also the file cabinets. Last but not least, this is the final paint booth for final paint before the units would go out of the door. This is still in its original location from what we can tell from the original prints from the 1960s. While the paint booth has likely changed over the years, the location of the booth has not changed, and it's really close to shipping and receiving, so that way the units can just be sprayed here, and then they can basically be prepped to go out the door. They went ahead and bought this land, and then they broke ground in 1965. And there's a few things I just want to point out. Number one, they had a ceremony. They took some shovels, they turned over some dirt, and it cost $3.5 million to build this whole facility.
Wow. I wonder today what that might be. Probably a billion something. I'm just gonna guess.
This was a lot of money, and especially for Kewanee at this point in time.
In the 60s.
In the 60s. Also think about, from this is one manufacturing facility underneath one roof with an office attached to it.
Wow.
You've got Boiler, which was a bunch of buildings. You've got all the rest of Kewanee Machinery Conveyor. You've got Walworth.
Yep.
Walworth had a ton of buildings, which, by the way, we'll visit that here in a minute.
Okay.
So a number of people spoke at the groundbreaking. Reverend Burdett R. Palmberg of the Evangelical Covenant Church. Do you know where that's at?
Oh, we were talking about this the other day. I can't remember now.
It's down by McKinley Park.
Oh, yeah. It's on the corner of Division and George Street, I believe.
Yes, I think you're right. So he referred to this project here that we're sitting in as a gift of honest toil.
That's an interesting quote.
Well, that's what I thought, too. I was going to say, when you're looking through, there's a huge insert from the Star Courier on it. So then Mayor M. F. Limbeck delivered the official welcome on behalf of the city. And he said that Kewaneans should be proud of their fine productivity record and good personnel relations. He also praised the manager, Dean Polson, for his work in making the plant development a reality.
Okay.
So...
And this is the first M. Limbeck.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So then you've got Robert Galloway, who is part of Walworth Corporation. Okay. He is the president of something called the Kewanee Industrial Association.
I've heard of that.
Okay. I didn't realize it existed till this point. So, that was kind of cool. He congratulated HYSTER's officials on their faith in Kewanee and offered assistance from the other industries in town.
Really?
Yeah.
So one industry, even though you think they might be competitors, maybe they don't make the same things, but they're like, hey, we're here to support you.
Well, and that's also interesting, too, because someone I talked to said that when HYSTER came here, they went ahead and they started, I shouldn't say poaching, but they started getting talent from other places in Kewanee. Where do you think they pulled from?
We supported you, and then you took our people.
Well, but still, think about it. If you're working at, I'm just gonna pick on another business, and you're making $5 an hour, and they offer you $6. Back then, a buck an hour, that was a big deal.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So a couple of things. One of the things I do want to mention is Gaylord Gamble, factory manager with 25 years of service, was quoted as saying, HYSTER company is people. And he used this theme to praise the employees. This demonstrates the employees and management can work together to attain our desired goals.
That's one thing I've heard about HYSTER, no matter who I've talked to, is, and I know you're going to get into that later, just the sense of family and community. Oh,
it really was. And it really was a family. It really was a community. And we had Thanksgivings on the shop floor. We had Christmas parties. We had golf outings. We had picnics.
So when it was your birthday, what would happen?
People would, believe it or not, it was a tradition at this plant that if it was your birthday, everybody brought in treats for you. You did not bring in your own treats.
That's awesome.
So in the MIS department, because that's where I used to work, everybody would bring in treats for me. And then when it was Bruce's birthday, we'd bring in for Bruce. If it was Mary's birthday, we'd bring in for Mary, Steve's, or Lee's, or Judy's, whoever. Nice. Even Sue Serrana's, we'd even bring stuff in for her.
Well, she's nice.
I didn't hang up on you, Sue, I promise. So yes. So it was really a family. Now, something else we found that was really interesting, we found it at the museum. 2000 Kentville Road is referred to as Plant 2.
Yep.
But it's not the only Plant 2.
That's what
So we found in a memo from HYSTER that the big move was happening. And the big move to the new plant, it mentioned that they were winding up operations at Plant 2, which is at the Walworth property. And they're going to continue to use up Walworth property for welding training, but move everything out to 2000 Kentville Road.
So it sounds like they had a little mini HYSTER on Walworth property, and we've been trying to figure that out. We're still working on it. Have yet to figure. If anybody knows, let us know. but just trying to figure out, okay, exactly where and for how long.
And what building.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, that was kind of really cool. So, HYSTER moved into this new plant on August 8th, 1966, with production starting on August 15th.
Wow.
So, another interesting one from Facebook, Jody Whitmire said his dad, Joe, and then John Brady actually took a lot of the aerial photographs, and some we're going to post right here on this podcast. Mm-hmm. The aerials that you're going to see, because we've got some really great ones of the plant being built, the finished plant, and other things there. So those are taken by those gentlemen.
Awesome. That's awesome.
And then we also have there's a 12 it's like 12 to 14 page special insert from the Star Courier on the opening of HYSTER plant.
It is pretty neat, and just to see all the other businesses congratulating them and wishing them well, and just the old pictures and old names and old stores that, well, they don't exist anymore. It's just neat to see that history and just all the stuff about HYSTER.
Yeah. So the other really interesting thing is one of the first production units of compactors that was created in Kewanee was the C450. Mm-hmm. And there was a really awesome picture of that. And it was actually first produced down at Plant 1, but it was produced in 1966 as they're moving up here.
Okay.
And that was the first one to be produced here. Mm-hmm. It was developed down there, produced here. That self-propelled unit weighed 50,000 pounds, had a blade, and it was very large. It was called one of the world's largest compaction units at the time.
Wow.
So now they also did forklifts here. Mm-hmm. They did trailers here as well at Plant 2, and they did a weird for us now. It was a tow behind compactor, single drum. It's called a C150A, tow behind compaction unit.
Wow.
Yeah. So now we talked about Star Courier. Mm-hmm. One thing I would want to point out is that it advertised in that insert varied job opportunities and were afforded. They had 8 retail branch offices, 4 domestic manufacturing plants, and just the general offices were in Portland, Oregon. But the interesting part is they mentioned 2 new computers. So
in 1966, you're an IT guy. I'm not an IT person. Would it take up this whole room? I mean...
this room is small.
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, it would take up the whole room.
Wow.
So it would take up the whole room, and but they didn't have displays. It was all punch cards.
Oh. Okay.
So people, one person I used to work with, Mary Rollison, and then also I believe Alice Connor, they actually were key punch people.
Oh, wow.
So they would actually go ahead and do some of the stuff on the punch cards.
Okay.
From what they told me in the past. But another thing is, one of the people I used to work with, Lee Fulton, he used to be a high school teacher, and he actually saw the ad here for HYSTER. He actually applied, and he worked here till he retired. And he started doing stuff. This is programming languages and stuff. But he worked on the systems out here. The last system he worked on was the IBM System 38, which was not year 2000 compliant. But he programmed both COBOL and RPG.
Wow.
By the way, he did help me with my COBOL homework, so I appreciate him for that.
Thanks, Lee Fulton.
He was a great guy. So there's a lot of really cool things going on here. And one of the other things I want to mention is they actually had a nurse at this location. And
I know at Walworth they had a nurse, and I would imagine it's probably good. Maybe there's unfortunately some injuries or, and so it's probably good to have a medical person on hand.
The first nurse was actually Phyllis Custer, who was Benny Custer's wife. And actually they live not too far. If you just go across the tracks, down the road about 3/4 of a mile, that's where they lived.
Oh, wow.
So that was kind of cool. Now, Plant 2's been built. They're rocking and rolling on manufacturing here. They're getting things organized and stuff. They're moving. Things got bigger. So
I would imagine, yeah.
So in the 60s, they were building a lot of roads and everything. So there's a lot of demand for compaction equipment. There's a lot of demands for trailers. So in 1968, they built Plant 3, which is now Pines.
Oh, so to the east of us here.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that was Plant 3, and that was built with the specific purpose to make trailers. And at that point in time, HYSTER employed 405 people at the plants.
That's awesome.
So, I mean, you talk about one of the larger, not even manufacturers, but larger businesses in town. So much of the success of the 60s and 70s, I mean, it just was, America was growing. There's a lot of prosperity. I mean, yes, there was the Vietnam War going on towards the end of the 60s, early 70s. But, I mean, there was a lot of...
More people had cars, more traveling, so more road development. And,
I mean, the interstate system, the Eisenhower interstate system, I mean, just think about it. And it all needed compaction to work.
Oh, yeah.
Now, there was also cranes that were made here. There was also... We'll get into some other...
I did not know that. Okay.
And in the next podcast, we'll get into some other products and stuff.
So it sounds like we have a lot more to talk about.
We really do. So, I mean, this has been... great to talk about Martin Trailer and really talk about where HYSTER, where Compaction America and everything came from. So one of the things I do want to thank, I start out with thanking MTM Trailer. So thank you for letting us film in here. We want to thank Carol Carpenter. Also, I want to thank Alice Connor for all her resources and just stopping and talking to me about the old days and such. And Steve Wilson, I really appreciate him. He spent a lot of time with me talking about, and I forgot to mention, his dad was one of the first people or first shifts over at Martin Trailer when it became Martin Trailer. Also want to thank Dave Reeves. I'll probably mention him some more in the next episode. And just, I mean, there's a lot of people. If you posted something on Facebook or you reached out to me on Facebook, thank you very much. We really appreciate you. And this is hopefully a really good episode.
And I am still going to be around, but we're going to have Leanne get behind the camera with Jon for part 2.
All right.
See you later.
See ya.
Thanks for cruising with us today. We hope you enjoyed the show and you'll join us for our next cruise down Kewanee Memory Lane.